Once upon a time, we had our land, our culture, and our minds. Surely we had tribes, but we all lived right there in Africa. Things began to change. There were forces that divided us. Spread throughout the
Oh, wow, I like that.
Alafia, I'm Dr. Gloria Lattimore Peace, host and producer of OmniU Presents the H3O Art of Life show. The title of our show is Caught in the Crosshairs. I've toyed with Caught in the Crossfire because it seems that no matter how I look at this, it seems that our young people are in between what the old folks call a rock and a hard place. Wow. And I know that I have two guests here who are competent to define this situation so that we can get some clarity on it and maybe suggest some things that we ought to be doing as a community and as individuals to rescue our young people from the horns of this dilemma. I have with me Kwesi Ronald Harris, who's going to tell me what he does, because I used to know when he was at the Bobby Wright Mental Health Center, and now he's at Chicago State University running some kind of men's center, so he'll tell us about that. And Hunter Haviland Adams III, who is with Lifeway Sciences, and I don't know what else, Hunter. Yeah, you just came back from Sweden over there giving a lecture. So your scope is broader than the titles that you bear. So let's just get started and let's talk about, first of all, I want to know about this men's center that you're doing at Chicago State University, because that may be a part of the solution, although not all of our young people are going to have access to it. At least we can have a model.
Yeah, well, particularly the African American Male Resource Center, as it's called at Chicago State University, is a academic support advocacy program, particularly for African American males. But by no means do we discriminate. We welcome females, we welcome other ethnic groups into the center as well, just by the virtue we're on a college campus. But it's primarily to deal with the missing presence of African American males in higher education. And so we provide academic support, we provide counseling, we provide mentoring, leadership development, ultimately to inspire the young men to continue the mission. We actually coined a phrase on campus called Operation Graduation. Dr. Wayne Watson, who's the president of the university, has given us certain tenets to work from. We want to embrace you, we want to engage you, we want to empower you, we want to educate you and enlighten you. And hopefully by doing all of those things, collaboratively, in isolation, collectively, however, we begin to mold and round out our African American males on campus to become achievers. And we coined a phrase also in our program called Timbo. Timbo is a Kiswahili word that means elephant. The elephant is our totem. And we took that from reading a story about a group of young elephants that were on a reserve, and they noticed that there was some carnage of other animals around. So right away they thought it was poachers. And one night the game wardens were out, and they looked and they noticed it was the young bull elephants. They were literally gorging little rhinoceroses and hippopotamus. So right away what they did, they took the young elephants and replaced them into another part of the reserve with older male elephants. And so we see ourselves as the older male elephants on campus with the young bull elephants, and we want to show them the way of the elephant. You know, be regal, be strong, be mighty, you know, and be resourceful, but at the same time be respectful of your environment. And, you know, and I think it becomes a metaphor for our young men to say, I want to be that. And so that's the program, and we're really excited about it. We've seen a lot of breakthroughs versus breakdowns, and we're just continuing the journey right now.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that, because I'm thinking that you have, you know, if young men can make it to the university, if they can just get through the trials and tribulations that lead up to graduating from high school
Yes.
and enrollment and qualification to be in the university. This is a good thing, and especially since the junior colleges really serve as a kind of bridge
Absolutely.
between the high schools and the four-year university, and the junior colleges are under fire. You know, it's going to be the elephants are going to have to leave the university, and they're going to have to come out in the hood.
That's right.
And set up something. But it's a good model. It's
Yes.
an excellent model. Now, Hunter was just recently in Sweden, and he was talking to me about the behavior of the young people, but mainly he was talking about the environment in which these young people are developing, an environment that is relatively free of oppression and racism and all of the things that our young people have to overcome in order to get to you. And would you want to say something about that, Hunter?
Sure. I was there at the scientific conference on towards science of consciousness, and I made a presentation there. It featured Nobel laureates, Roger Penrose, and I can't recall the other person's name who was involved in HIV/AIDS, as well as one of the most popular MDs around who talks about raising people's consciousness, Deepak Chopra, who did a 7-hour workshop and presentation. So the conference was focused on understanding consciousness, what is it, can science investigate it, and so forth. So it was an international conference, so people came from everywhere, around 500 attendees. I was one. But while I was there for over a week, you know, getting around Stockholm and other parts of Sweden, I had, you know, my sociological hat on and was observing people and how they interacted, how society looks at behaviors, particularly behaviors of teens. And, you know, one of the things I came away from is that, well, Sweden only has less than 10 million people, and it's primarily a homogeneous society. There are some immigrants. There are African immigrants from Ethiopia and Sudan and South Africa and Cape Verde. So they're there, and you know, there's been an African presence in Sweden for 300-400 years. Even when you start looking at the recent history of, say, 400 years ago, you find that there were some Africans who even somehow managed to be inside of the king's court, because Sweden is a constitutional monarchy, although the king, kind of like the Queen of England, is more of a figurehead because there is a parliament. But in looking at how people are, you know, it was really astounding. You know, here, if, for example, if you see some youth rushing through the turnstile in the L station, and the police happen to see that, we know what's going to happen to the youth. They're going to be arrested, and that's the beginning of a criminal record for them. But there I watched as youth, you know, one used his car to open the gates, and about 6 or 7 of them went right on through. No big deal. And I saw it twice. And police were standing there, and they just watched. I said, that's interesting. And apparently, one of the things that they get, which this society does not get, and which my dear friend and colleague and brother, Kwesi, with his program, understands, is that youth brains aren't fully developed. Their frontal cortex, which deals with decision making and deciding between the right choices to make, the best choices to make, is not mature and doesn't mature until around 28 or so. So they understand there's a developmental curve that youth go through. And in order for them to be productive citizens, that you have to allow that to occur and guide it and shape it. And you don't criminalize just something such as having fun going through a turnstile, for example. And now they do have some problems, however. One of the problems that Sweden has, which this country, many major urban areas are coming to grips with, is tobacco. That they have kind of relaxed public health initiatives concerning smoking. So you can't smoke in certain public buildings, in libraries and schools, in office buildings, things like that. But Dr. Peace, if you decided you want to go out and go to a concert and the concert was in a club, you would have to fight through the haze of tobacco smoke because they allow tobacco smoke that you can smoke in clubs. I couldn't go in one for that reason. Now the air is clean when you come outside, but you have to contend with that. Another thing that I would like to say, and I'm sure this will be a lead-in to one of the things we're going to talk about or focus on this evening, is public drinking. Public drinking. Here, you could be arrested if you're drinking beer or wine on the streets, on the trains, on the buses, on the corners. You could be arrested for that. And again, what would happen? You get a record. And you do that several times, you know, from a misdemeanor, it goes up to a felony. And we know what happens, that you become part of the, which Michelle Alexander in her book, The New Jim Crow, talks about. You'll be one of the millions of people, mainly men, many African American men, who are incarcerated. Not just simply incarcerated, but involuntary servitude.
Slavery.
Because that's what it is.
Yes.
If you go to jail, you are a servant to the United States government and to the state government, in which, if it's not a federal crime, in which you were convicted. But there it's different. Teenagers, 17, 18, Kwesi. I saw a young sister, probably from Ethiopia, with a quart of wine, just chugging on the train, and then passed the bottle, not a cup, didn't even pour it out. That's one of the problems that they have. So on the one hand, it's a less oppressive society, and by the way, it is mainly a secular society. 23% of Swedes, Norwegians, Finnish, from Denmark, they're atheists. They're atheists. Churches are concert venues, most of them, going back, 500 years. But the state religion is Lutheranism, right? I mean, I came up as a Lutheran. In fact, the church I went to was founded by Swedes. That was ironic that I ended up there. So, but they don't criminalize the public drinking. It's not a criminal act. It's a developmental act. That's a big distinction from here. That if you drink, if I go to a food store on 75th and Stony Island to the camera department, there's this huge statue greeting me, staring me in the face, of Snoop Dogg, promoting a beverage, an alcoholic beverage, which one bottle is like drinking a six-pack, the equivalent of alcohol to a six-pack of beer. One bottle.
Yeah.
12% alcohol. That's dangerous. And so you don't see that there. You don't see that type of advertising there. So it's a different society. And I bring this up because that's the state that we're in. There, public drinking, underage drinking to a point is not criminalized, is tolerated. They have guidance for youth who drink. And it's only on Saturday, Friday, and Saturdays. The rest of the week, it's studying. And it can be intense. But that's one of the things that happens. But here, on the one hand, if you drink and you're caught underage, that's a crime. There's no preventive measures there because there's money to be made and lives to be destroyed. It's intentional. It's a big difference, big difference. So I hope that kind of frames this issue that we're contending with today. That there's an intentional act to place a product in certain communities where the health consequences are known because they know what the consequences are going to be.
Yeah.
We want to destroy these people. We want to exploit their vulnerabilities of their developing nervous systems. We want to use every method of persuasion, including the new thing called nudging. We just want to give a little push, not overt persuasion, but just a little nudge. We want to move them over this direction. We want to make them lifetime drinkers. We want to make them lifetime smokers because we know what the consequences are. We can just keep doing that generation after generation after generation. And what does that do? That keeps on creating populations of people with severe health problems, compounding health problems. And so we're constantly on the defense. We're constantly fighting, Kwesi. Being there's no fight for recognition, for acknowledgement of your humanity, because everyone recognizes that. Of course they know you're African, they're European, Nordic European, but there's no fight for legitimacy as a human being. Why did the President of the United States have to release a birth certificate? Because this is a continuation of a fight that was proxy for the fight for legitimacy of African people in this country, that we have a right to exist. We're human beings. And so they're telling us that you're not human beings and we can do to you whatever we want to do. We can sell products to you, persuade you to consume them, knowing that they're going to shorten your life, reduce the quality of your life, that you won't know what being human is because you're constantly fighting to be human in your idea of it. And so the holiday comes and you just relax and chill out and have a family reunion.
Well, the paradox that I see is here you have the President of the United States with health care reform as a linchpin of his agenda. And you have the First Lady who is campaigning against obesity.
Health.
Right.
Health is at the top of the agenda in the White House.
Right.
So here you have an undermining of that agenda by some company that has decided that what they can do is profit from the destruction of the health of a certain ethnic group and a certain age grade. And it's us. That's why I named the show Caught in the Crosshairs, because we don't even recognize that they're gunning for us. We don't even recognize that our children are targeted with this advertising that you mentioned that is so
It's sinister.
Thank you for the word.
Yeah. You know, when you think about it, Dr. Peace, you're actually talking about something that those of us in the field of, environmental racism, social justice, marketing, social norms, we begin to understand what target marketing is really about. Target marketing is really the crux of what this is about. And you don't aim at something without deliberately saying you're going to make a direct hit. It's just like you aim at a target. It's a bullseye. Well, you ain't looking to hit the peripheral of the bull. You're looking to hit it dead center. And a lot of times the industry will tell you things like, we're not targeting young people. This is meant for adults. Well, if that's the truth, then who's out on the peripheral right now? It's not the adults. The adults are in the center if that's who you're saying you're targeting. So really, it's a disingenuous statement. Who you're really targeting is who's out on the peripheral, our most vulnerable, our young people, our women, and other aspects of the community. And so what we go to great lengths to try to do with our community is to try to engage them in dialogue and discussions, not debates. The reality is, this product that we're talking about is one of our good friends, Minister Paul Scott out of North Carolina. He actually has coined it as liquid genocide. We're fortunate that the Attorney General from Maryland led the charge along with 16 other Attorney Generals, particularly our Attorney General here, Lisa Madigan, where they coined it as binge in a can. Now imagine a young person, 15, 16 years old, getting a hold to a 23.5 ounce can of fruity flavored alcohol. It's not beer in a can, it's malt.
Wait a minute, did you say 16 years old?
15, 16-year-olds are getting access to this product.
Because it's in convenience stores and all you have to do is reach in and get it.
Well, that and then the sinisterness of the marketing ploy. The cans look very alluring. They use bright neon colors. The fact that you have a social icon, Mr. Calvin Broadus, also known as Snoop D-O-double-G, as the national spokesperson. Is Tom Burrell, the author of the book Brainwash. He spoke about it in the New York Times, I believe it was, or the Wall Street Journal, one of the two papers, where he stated, if they weren't targeting African Americans, then why did you all go and get Snoop Dogg to be the spokesperson? If you just wanted to sell an alcoholic beverage, you could have got Waylon Jennings to promote it. You could have got Billy Ray Iverson to promote it. You know, these are some country western singers. No, when you do target marketing, you have studied the target. You have done great research on the target. You've even been among the target. There's a wonderful documentary that was on PBS called The Merchants of Cool. The Merchants of Cool. In there, they talk about a phenomena called cool hunting. Cool hunting. And hunting for cool is individuals who work with big marketing, advertising companies, and, social scientists. They go among the people.
Among the youth.
And they study them. They watch. It's like I tell the young people, our hip became their hop. Our rehearsals become their commercials. So, yeah, our community is being targeted. But what you better be careful about is that what you see us do today, your children will be doing tomorrow. Because everybody wants to be in the know. And so if you make this consuming of an alcohol beverage seem fashionable, seem hip, seem cool, well, some other children may see it the same way. And unfortunately, the collateral damage won't just be our community, it'll be other communities too. So our efforts, while yes, we have a vested interest in working in our community because that's where we live, that's where we breathe, that's where we draw our beingness from. But at the same time, we don't wish this upon anybody's community. In the aspect of this product, I think too that needs to be made known is that there was another artist, Talib Kweli. He performs with Mos Def. Mos Def has been featured in movies, but they're both members of a hip-hop group called Black Star. Well, he was slated to do a concert in Lawrence, Kansas on April the 20th. He got, through social networking and technology, we were able to give him the information where this particular company had put their logo and their titles all on the product, on his concert venue. Well, by us making him aware, he said, I didn't agree to that. So because we enlightened him, we embraced him in love, we educated him.
You engaged him.
He shut, back to my program, our program rather, he shut it down. He said, I'm not gonna, you all cannot sponsor my concert. He went on and did the concert minus the advertisement from the alcoholic beverage company, which I thought he should be commended for. Because in this day and age, we need our cultural artists to understand that they can't keep sponsoring us and killing us at the same time. See, you can't say you want to represent the community, but then at the same time you're having a relationship with an entity that seeks to come to destroy your community. And so I like to say that for us, I thought that was a victory.
Sure.
And these are the kind of stories that need to get out more and more, because there are cultural artists here in Chicago who support this effort, who represent with us very strong. They're not feeling it one way or the other. It's wrong. It's just wrong. And it's interesting, the responses that we've gotten from the Pabst Brewing Company as well as its ownership. Their response has been, we're not intending to target any particular underage group. But there's a lot of sinisterness and a lot of disingenuous stuff going on with the campaign.
But you know, we have toxic substances are poison. That's what toxic
Absolutely.
means. You know, and so for people who have the health challenges that we have as a people,
Yes.
for people who have the economic challenges that we have as a people, that is to say, to afford to take care of ourselves, especially when we are ill, to pay for doctors and hospitals that are vanishing from our communities. Health care is very difficult for poor black people to come by. We don't need anything added to our present oppression. We do not need anything that will further diminish our ability to live and to grow and to be vigorous and be vital as a people. So when you think about these intoxicants, you know, all of them, whether they be nicotine or caffeine or alcohol or other forms of drugs, all of them, all these forms of drugs, they are debilitating to our health. They do nothing for us. They do everything to us to destroy us. Not only do we have to try to combat those who would pour those things into our community and create great interest in their use, but we also have to set an example. I once went to a retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh, and a woman asked the question. She said, I have a single glass of wine in the evenings, you know, when I relax. You know, I'm not an alcoholic and I don't, you know, do a lot of it. Is that harmful? He said it is harmful because what you are doing is endorsing the use of alcohol. And it's not just the fact that other people see you and think it's all right. You're giving it your stamp of approval by virtue of the fact that you yourself consume it. But also think about the amount of grain, the amount of fruit, the amount of real food that it takes to produce alcoholic beverages. And think of the number of people who are starving in the world, who, if those same grains and if that same fruit was put to other purposes, such as in creating food to be consumed, you would reduce the starvation in the world. You are contributing to world hunger. I mean, this thing, this alcohol consumption contributes to world hunger. And the consumption of tobacco, do you know what it takes to do tobacco farming? Do you know the slavery that is involved, the suffering that people have to do in order to plant and to cultivate and to harvest tobacco crops? You need to be able to link your behavior up to the social consequences, not just that it will kill the children.
Right.
We certainly don't want to kill the children. But we are certainly not intending to create suffering throughout the world, because we know you reap what you sow.
What goes around
Comes around.
That's right.
So we have to take responsibility for this as a community. We have to not only make people aware of the hazards of consuming these various intoxicants, but we also have to not contribute to it ourselves by saying, well, we're adults and it's okay. No, it's not okay, because what you're doing is you're setting the example. You're saying it's all right. And so consequently, you are creating a situation in which the people who are advertising, see, you could advertise all day long if there was a mindset that that's harmful and I don't want any part of it. The advertising would fall on deaf ears.
That's one of the biggest challenges is what you just said, is the mindset for greater responsibility for our behavior and how we contribute to poverty, how we contribute to violence, how we contribute to inequity between different social classes, all those things. That's a huge question, and the problem is, it was wonderful being away for 9 days and not have to hear about Newt Gingrich or Sarah Palin or all this other stuff, or the debt ceiling.
The distractions.
You know, people are distracted.
Yes.
They're distracted. This society runs on distraction. It runs on fear. It runs on disillusionment and despair. That's what we see every day, 24/7. Every day. People are distracted away from things that can make them healthy, things that can make them happy.
And enhance their lives.
And enhance their lives, their humanity.
Mm-hmm.
They're hit with fear in so many ways. Every day, the fear of this, the fear of tornadoes, the fear of floods. Those are natural things that happen every single year.
Right.
There's not a year that goes by when there's no tornadoes. There's not a year that goes by where there's no floods. There's not a year that goes by where there's no earthquakes. We live in a precarious environment. That's part of it. But our ancestors, native people, indigenous folks, they were afraid when things happen, but they weren't projecting that fear into the present.
Right.
You live with it, you move through it when things happen, and you recover from it, and you rebuild. But when people are faced with the fear of this, fear of that, distracted by this, disillusion, despair, popping all sorts of antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications that they constantly advertise, and well, you need this, you're not a whole human being, so you need to wear these shoes, and then you can play tennis like Serena Williams, you know, or you need this car, because of this car, you can get the girl that you want. You might even find your next wife. Oops, better not go down that path. But the point is, people don't have time to think. Right. They can't think. There's a science that advertisers use called agnology.
That's right.
The science of keeping people ignorant oops, maybe I shouldn't have said that publicly. I'm speaking too much.
But you got to let it out.
Keeping people ignorant.
Yeah.
Don't take my word for it. You can Google it.
Keeping
To keep
people
people
detached
ignorant.
From reality.
From reality.
From reality.
Absolutely.
Detached from what's real, what's
real.
important.
And what you begin to see is young people, or people in general, particularly people who have not fully developed their maturity, their ability to think rationally, they begin to create these altered worlds, these fantasy worlds. And so it's almost
Real Housewives.
So
reality TV.
Reality TV, and that has
Unreality.
blown me away just hearing that term. You know, the only thing that I've ever seen that was reality was a stage play, because that was real. There was no commercial interruptions. Reality TV, we'll be back with a word after our sponsors. You know, but what I was speaking to, though, was the notion how our young people who have not learned how to discern what is unreal, and they begin to take things that are abnormal
And
normalize it. So while I was growing up, I knew that you respected your elders. It wasn't a question. It wasn't an option to debate it. You know why? You just did it because you modeled that behavior.
And because you were intelligent.
Yeah.
Because I maintain that. I was talking to someone just recently, and they were talking about this same thing about belligerent children talking back and this kind of thing. And, you know, how they had to use force, you know, to finally, after constantly saying stop doing that, they had to finally resort to some real physical thing. And I said, but you see, when we were growing up, we were too intelligent to make our parents resort. I mean, the last thing in the world you wanted to do
Go to the
was
next level.
Absolutely. You certainly wanted to stop short
DEFCON 4.
of aggravating your parent to the extent that they had to use corporal punishment on you, because nobody wanted to experience the pain and suffering.
Absolutely.
But you almost have masochism in some young people. They will push and push and push until you have to raise the level of your resistance.
Your voice.
You have to raise it until you can get it heard. But this distraction, some relatives of mine took me someplace, and the interesting thing was, when I was picked up, the person who picked me up was talking on a cell phone. And they talked on the cell phone all the way to the train.
Wow.
And then we got on the train and they pulled out a laptop. And they worked on the laptop all the way to the stop. And then when we got to the place where we were getting off, there was another person to pick us up to take us the rest of the way. That person was on a cell phone. And I thought, now, these people think we're together. We're not together. Nobody has been with me.
No human interaction.
No, nobody has been with me. We are physically in the same space, but we are in no way connected. You know, and as far as they're concerned, we spent. They said when the day was finished, oh, it was so good to spend some time together. No, we didn't spend some time together.
Right.
We're not conscious of the distractions. A cell phone is such a common thing that you're not even aware. You're sitting across the table from somebody in a restaurant. The cell phone, they answer the phone? No, you're sitting here with somebody. You don't talk on the phone. Or if you do, you leave the table and you go somewhere and have the conversation. But you don't ignore people in whose company you are sitting.
Right.
So you talk about the distractions. I mean, we have all of these things. We have iPads and iPods and cell phones and laptops. We have every gadget in the world to keep us from engaging. And if you're never engaging and embracing, how are you saying you love people? How are you just automatically saying love you when you finish a phone call? You know, you're not loving people. We're not loving people because we're not engaged.
Yeah.
Right.
We're not having meals together. We're not doing anything together. We don't know how each other is doing. No one knows how anybody is doing.
Right.
It's like, you know, the technology is not a bad thing if you use it in the proper context. But what happens is nobody has made it contextual. Nobody has said, this is what, I give you an example, like even at the university, all of our first-time, full-time freshmen were giving iPads. And the vision is that because you can get your ebooks, it's cheaper, you know, it's putting our children on par with the rest of the world. But at the same time, nothing replaces human interaction. So even to do the engagement, at some point, the iPad has got to be turned off so that you can get the practicalness of how to...
The intimacy. How can
Exactly.
you get intimate with a gadget?
Technology. Yeah. That's why I tell people all the time, I don't have a problem with technology, but I'm more high touch than high tech. I want to connect with you. I want to feel, as people say, I want to feel you. You know, you hear the young people.
I want to see you.
Yeah, I want to see you. You know, I want to have a one-on-one with you.
Right.
And I think that's important. But then at the same time, the industries, they play on that. They know that our children are very impressionable, and they go after it, right? Hook, line, and sinker. They go in for the jugular. Again, you know, you're going to use someone who says, you know, I'm a father. I'm the founder of a Little League football team in LA. I'm moving it across the country now. But then at the same time, oh, we want you, by the way, on your stopovers, we want you to market this alcoholic beverage too. It's a contradiction, you know, and I think someone has to educate the young people on what those contradictions are. I mean, we all live with contradictions. That's not nothing unusual. But at the same time, though, when you're talking about things that are destroying your life, though, at some point, the hard question shouldn't be an option. You got to answer it. Is this killing you? Is this destroying you? Is this impacting on your ability to live a quality and quantity, you know, a quality and a quantity of life? A good friend of mine, Dr. Vanilla Randall, wrote this book called Dying While Black.
Right.
Powerful book.
I have to
She's
see
a
that.
law professor at the University of Dayton, and I just thought that one of the things that I took away from that book was she talked about the slave health deficit. And today we are still suffering from that impact of slave health deficits. When you think about our optimum health, when was it? It was prior to our contact with any outside forces. We were living quality lives. We were living long lives. But now in this other space and place, I mean, when you think of exactly, when you think about when you talked about a minute ago, Dr. Peace, about the healthcare industry, our first contact today in this country with the healthcare industry is generally through an emergency room. If you don't have means, it's an urgent, exactly. And it's not even a healthcare industry anymore. It's a sick care industry.
That's right.
And we have to be clear on that.
Health or care.
None of that. And so again, this notion that we're doing with the young people, which is really a conversation around wellness in health, I think it becomes a pivotal moment to say, okay, let's look at what are these things, if we were able to put it up on a grid, what are these things that contribute to the quantity and quality of our lives, and what are these things that take away from it? The analogy you just gave about the ability to feed other people, if we just pulled away from an industry that uses so much quantity of life-sustaining substances, it's about a mind shift, you know. And so I'm really excited about our efforts, Brother Hunter, the other people across the country, because this is not happening in isolation. That's the beautiful thing. And by using technology again, this show will be beamed out into the cosmos. And so who knows whose ears and eyes and minds it's going to land on. But clearly they're going to hear another view. And I think that's what's important, you know, that we begin to see the power in us just pushing the notion or putting it out there, you know, speaking it as it is so. We want to be well. We want to be healthy. And our communities are under siege But at the same time, when you're under siege, you got to speak out, you got to take action, and you got to fight back.
You know, this is not a marketing campaign. It's a military campaign.
Absolutely. War.
Because ultimately is what can be the casualty count?
Yes.
You know, what will be the casualty count? How do you measure the casualties?
You can't, because you don't know when the casualty occurred.
That can be a problem, because you don't, but in the larger scheme of things, this is another vector, something else that can keep that casualty count up generation after generation after generation. So you add the smoking, the tobacco on top of that. You add the normalization of marijuana smoking. That is okay, it's only a herb. God gave us every herb bearing seed, but it doesn't say to smoke it. Right?
Didn't say light it on fire.
Didn't say light it on fire. So when you start looking at all of these factors, the food insecurity that's sweeping communities all over this country, food deserts, all of these things keep adding up to more and more stress.
Well, you drinking the food
every day.
You drinking the food. The grain that could have been used for cereal and bread is going into hops.
Yes, it's going
It's
into
Hops and
becoming.
Marleys.
It's
Fermented.
going
And
into.
it's not hip
It's going
either.
Oh, no, it's
into.
not hip hop.
It's going into. It's going into malt liquor.
Yeah.
The water and the grain that is being used to feed cattle so that they can occupy your grill on some holiday is food. We are starving people with habits and addictions that we have chosen out of ignorance. We don't know, we don't understand the implications between the butterfly effect, for example, that an act over here can have such far-reaching, like you say, this with this technology, this goes out, you know, to eons. You don't know where it will go. So the thing is that we have to take responsibility for our own actions, and we have to take responsibility for informing people, as you are doing in this campaign. And people with celebrity, I read about celebrities who do wonderful things with their celebrity. You know, they go down and they try to get housing for people who are homeless, or they try to build schools for people who are without them, or they try to find water supplies for people who don't have clean water. Your celebrity can be parlayed into much greater benefits to the human race than to get some young people
that's a good point. The name Snoop, D-O-G-G, that's not a celebrity. That's a caricature.
Right.
Okay.
That's a difference. Right. So he can say, it's not me.
Right.
It's not me that's doing this.
Not Mr. Calvin Broadus.
This is my caricature. This is my public persona that's doing this. It's not me. When you see my face, that's not me. That's my persona that's doing this. I said, but correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think the brewing company, when they wrote the check out for you to be the pitch man for this disaster, wrote Snoop, D-O-G-G on the check.
Because you're not cashing that at the bank.
You can't cash that at the bank.
No.
So we have to call these people out, because some of them keep dancing around the issue, dancing around responsibility. Where's the uproar nationally to slam this behavior? That this is unacceptable, absolutely, unequivocally unacceptable.
Obviously, there is no slam nationally.
No, it's not.
Well,
we're working on that.
Well, I think one aspect of it, I think to borrow from our process when we went after the tobacco industry, we used the concept that we coined, which was grassroots litigation legislation. I like to think that we're operating with that same idea again on this issue, because we have spoken to the masses. The litigation part is pivotal, because in any state, your chief litigator is your attorney general. The fact that I know here in the state of Illinois, our attorney general, Lisa Madigan, on these, she has landed on the right side of a lot of these kind of issues, be it
and fought
hard. And so it wasn't difficult to get her support on this fight, because she saw the support of the grassroots again and say, hey, this is what the community's calling for. I'm gonna stand with them on that. And then to connect that not just locally, but nationally within NAG, which is the National Association of Attorney Generals. So what we challenge folk in other states to do, if your AG ain't involved in this fight, this is where your voice can become powerful, because the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Closed mouth don't get fed. You want direct action, you go after them. And then you begin to then move from litigation to legislation, where it becomes a policy. See, one thing about this country that we live in, policies are enacted to become eventually laws and become the authority at that point. And so if we can get our community to begin to become more sophisticated, and the sophistication is there. We have some very intelligent people in our community. Brilliant minds. It's just getting them in a place, in a space where there's intimacy and dialogue and discussion going on.
And the cell phones turned off.
And the iPads and the laptops. We only use them if we got to do the PowerPoint. But I just think those are some of the things that we saw that slam is happening, and it's a slow process. This is not something that happens overnight. The fact that 16 attorney generals wrote a letter to the company saying, hey, we see this as target marketing. Now that company has got to respond to those attorney generals. And trust me, they don't not want to respond. They're gonna want to respond, because the attorney generals then will then go to their next level. That is, okay, fine. You didn't see that we were serious? We're gonna show you how serious we are. And I think this is where the community become very powerful, because we got community people all over the country taking pictures of the images, taking pictures of the events, getting the product, all of that. And these become valuable, what would they call, exhibits in the litigation fight now, because now it's hard for them to say, well, this community found this sold at a convenience store 100 feet from a neighborhood school. So you either going to get it off the shelf, or we're going to come in and we're going to mandate that you take it off the shelf.
But I think the community part is good, but I think national leadership, national organizations, they have to be called into question too, as missing this one also.
True.
They miss the cool mix piece, in 2004. The National Medical Association is going to have their meeting in Washington, D.C., I think the last week in July. National Association of Black Psychologists. There's a number of national organizations that tend not to be very activist motivated in issues like that, because some of them, to be honest, get funding from these various sources.
Absolutely.
And so at some point we have to say, well, look, what's more important? The health and mind of our youth, or trying to find more creative ways to sustain your organization with other funding resources, rather than taking funding from companies whose sole objective is to destroy you by destroying youth. And we can't just sit back.
Right.
I mean, the work we're doing is having a powerful effect, as it did in 2004. But it can have a greater effect if more leadership join in this circle.
Absolutely.
It's offensive for me to go into a major chain grocery store, to the counter because I'm trying to get some film developed, and here's this life-size statue, not of Michael Jordan, but of an individual promoting this product. It was really offensive.
But you see, you are fully developed frontally. And we understand. Well, see, the thing is that we understand that we have young people
And so many
who are
people are oblivious to
inexperienced.
that.
Right.
But that's what I'm saying. We have young people who are inexperienced, who are underdeveloped, who are undeveloped, who will make these choices out of lack of knowledge.
Right.
If we don't stand between them
In the gap.
and those
to.
people
We
who are
have to.
exploiting that, then we may as well just lay them up on an altar and sacrifice them,
To
because
Moloch.
that's exactly what we're doing.
Right.
Because this was like an impulse buy, like the
Point of purchase.
the tabloid newspapers,
Right. Esquire and all that.
you know, for mainly female shoppers. And here you have this statue, this cardboard cutout, and the product right there by the cash register.
Mm-hmm.
Impulse buy. Oh, fruity. Oh, this may be good.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I find very interesting? Some of the marketing on this piece, they talk about that it's real fruit juice, but when you look at the packaging and you look at the can, it actually says fruit flavored. So that means that that's a chemical creation there. And God only knows what that's going. One of our partners across the country, Dr. Deidre Taylor Brown, she teaches at UCLA, and she's with the Drew Center in California. She's an expert on the toxicology of alcohol, and she did an experiment, and one of our good friends that you know as well, Brother Coach Powell, who wrote the book Message in a Bottle, the 40-ounce scandal. Well, in volume 2, we did an experiment where we actually took a raw chicken bone, breast bone that had never been cooked, and put it in a bottle of malt liquor. And when you came back 48 hours later, the bone had disintegrated.
I'm not surprised.
And that's, for me, that's a sign of osteoporosis, the disintegration of the bones. So imagine what's happening to our young people if they're drinking beverages like that to and from school. So yeah, Johnny can't read, as Bobby talked about in his brilliant study.
Well, you know, we have less than a minute, and
Wow.
I just want to
Oh,
thank
wow.
you, Kwesi Ronald
Wait a
Harris.
minute. Is that all?
And Hunter Haviland Adams III for coming in and shedding some light on this situation, so that people can take action and understand that they need to
we gotta
take
take
action.
action.
Gotta take action.
Because, you know, we are the custodian of our youth. And whatever anybody else is doing to them, it is our job to do for them everything that we know to do. So it is your job to get the message out, so we will know to do this thing. We will know to stand between our children
Absolutely.
and the harm that is aimed in their direction.
And if we could, we really want to thank Lisa Fager and Paul Porter of IndustryEars.org. That's their website. It's based out of Washington, D.C. But these two individuals were pillars that stood with us in this fight and are still standing. And so we just want to let the listening audience know IndustryEars.org .org is where you can go and find out more about the national response to this product.